banks of the Arkansas. Her hair was brown and her eyes were green. She's the prettiest little girl ever I'd seen.
Back. I figure we might as well just finish her off. So for those of you that have stood this book out with us, we're almost done with this sucker. You believe that? Book 1, Journeys Out of the Body from Robert Monroe, or by Robert A. Monroe. We're almost done with this thing. Remember, in this broadcast, there is no pre-recorded production. It's not pretty, but it's real and it's authentic. Also, we have Wolf and Bryce in the live show Discord, so they may be chiming in depending on how big our curiosities get. And if you want to, you can always leave a question in the chat. Remember, last time we were on the broadcast, we were going through Robert Monroe's journey, and we talked about a lot of different things: the separation process, the vibratory events, the fear barrier, and also sexual energy, I guess, is something that he wanted to talk about. We might have a discussion on that later, but I want to get through the book anyways, and it's a pleasure always as having both Bryce here, now Wolf too. I had to have Wolf on. Wolf is such a gentleman, and he's always asking questions. Thanks for coming on, Wolf. You got to say something now.
Yeah, no worries, man. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. If your mic goes out or whatever, don't worry about it. We can adjust on the fly, you know? So, all right. So this one, this chapter is called, what's up, Ari? I didn't say what's up to Ari. Analysis of events. So he starts it off like this. So how did all this happen? Was there some avenue or approach that made sense? And the best answer seemed to lie in data analysis. This precluded use of the underground. And remember what his idea of the underground is. It's pretty much everybody that's involved with all of this stuff. And that's what he calls the underground, which is the only area that considered or accepted my, quote, problem as something beyond hallucination, since much of the underground data dealt principally in vague generalities. I wanted specifics, and I reasoned that there must be some way to organize the conflicting data I was accumulating. So I began to extrapolate sound possibilities and probabilities from what was known. The accepted method is to use or to keep one foot in the light and one on solid rock as you step cautiously onto dark, shifting grounds. Metaphors, metaphors, metaphors. The known data were sequences of events, symptoms, and results, and the sum of my experience and experimentation fell easily into 4 chronological stages. This is what I like about Robert Monroe, because he's trying to find, at all these crazy out-of-body experiences, he's trying to find parallels in these experiences. So the first is the preliminary stage. So this includes all events and activities prior to the symptom of the solar plexus cramp described earlier. So if you're just joining us, in the beginning of the book, before all of this OBE stuff started happening to him, before all of his out-of-body experiences started happening, he had a cramp in his abdomen or in his solar plexus that he couldn't figure out what it was. Sound like gallstones to me, but he thinks, and apparently he still thinks, because we're at the end of the book, that had something to do with a trigger. Early life patterns disclose 2 instances of unexplained paradoxes that seem relevant to this research. The first incident occurred when I was 8 years old. I reported to my parents a dream in which I sat in a room paneled in red-brown wood. In one corner was a cabinet from which came music and voices, which looked much like a Victrola. In the front of the cabinet was a window, and there were moving pictures in the window. The voices from the cabinet matched the people in the window, and it matched to what they seemed to be saying. It was like the moving picture shown at school, except that the people's words were heard rather than spelled out on the screen. Also, the moving picture in the cabinet was colored just as people and things really were. 30 years later, I sat in a mahogany-paneled room and watched color television for the first time. As best as I can be recalled, I had never seen any color motion pictures at the age when the dream took place. That's a pretty interesting thing. So maybe that was like precog or something. Could be. The second unusual event happened at the high school level at about the age 15. On a given Friday night, I had been looking forward expectantly to a party the next night. I had estimated that my cash requirements for the coming event were $2. Man, can you imagine going to a high school party that's only going to cost you $2? The 50s must have been nice, man. Or yeah, they had been like the 40s or the 50s. The problem was to find a source for the $2 before Saturday night. There had been no work available during the week to earn the money, and for one reason or another, my parents had been exhausted as a resource, so no prospect for work on Saturday was in sight. I went to bed Friday night worrying over this immediate problem. Upon awakening Saturday morning, I had an immediate vivid conviction that $2 were under an old plank lying outside on the ground beside the house. I knew of the existence of the plank, as it had been there for some time. However, I dismissed the idea as a wishful dream and went down to breakfast. After eating, still preoccupied with the dire financial problem, I thought again of the board and the $2 under it. Idly, in order to dismiss the idea, I went outside and around the house to where the plank lay on the ground. It looked undisturbed, half covered with dirt and leaves. It was impossible that someone could have inadvertently lost some money or placed it under the board. Still, as long as I was there, it wouldn't hurt to look just to get rid of the compulsion. I pulled the plank and raised it upwards. There were hundreds of ants and bugs on the damp dirt underneath, running frantically in all directions. Also on the wet earth, in the center of the area where the board was laying, were 2 folded crisp, dry $1 bills. I did not stop to consider how the money happened to be under the board. I made no mention of the incident at the time, except to a friend. I was too concerned that someone might claim the money. The problem for the night was solved. The incident had been forgotten completely until recall under the personal history search. Come on, man. So did he say, I mean, I'm trying to get this right. Did he say that he dreamed that there was $2 under the plank? Or did he say that he just had this feeling that there was I think he said he just had a feeling or an inclination that there was $2 under a board outside. He could have left it there and forgot about it. What do you guys think? What do you think, Wolf? You think he just left it there and forgot about it, or that was precog? I think he left it there. There's no way.
Not sure, man.
There's no way. You can't, I mean, precog from like years and years ahead of time, but that's just too damn trippy, man. All right. So continuing on. There was nothing more, no great traumas, just a basic American upbringing and scholastic family. And in view of the fact that it was a mental problem, and he has mental in quotations, psychiatry seemed to be the answer. Still no outward evidence of the strong repressions, compulsions, anxieties, and or phobias which normally show up in mental illness could be found. Close examination of the events leading up to the first out-of-the-body symptom, the severe cramps, brings to light several factors which deserve consideration. In the year immediately preceding the first incident, there was only one relatively unusual physiological change. During that year, I had 7 lower teeth capped in a rather lengthy dental process. Doesn't it? It seems like he's just grabbing for straws, trying to figure out, man, what triggered all this out-of-body stuff? Now he's in his damn teeth. This was examined in detail in relation to the later symptoms of tuning, the second state conditioned by movements of the jaw. It is possible that the bits of assorted metal comprising part of the tooth capping fabrication acted electrically or in some other fashion on the brain. Yeah, I highly doubt that, though. The resonant tuning probably works, but I doubt the caps had anything to do with it. Well, that's just my opinion, though. This still remains an unexplored possibility. Physicists, physiologists, and electronics specialists have no theory relating to this. Proper research could prove or disprove the hypothesis at all. Well, of course they're not going to have any theories on that. There are hundreds of thousands of people walking around with bits of metal in their teeth, and other such incidents have been reported. A survey might prove interesting. There was no other physiological changes significant enough to be recalled consciously. The only above-ordinary nutritional factor was that of vitamin intake. Since my wife believed strongly in nutrition, daily dosages of vitamin A, B, complex, C, and E, plus mineral tablets had been a norm for several years. Again, a cumulative effect could have been the cause, but no reports or research studies indicated any factors resembling the second state. Other than this, normal diet was the rule, with no major changes for 5 years at least. At the psychological and physical activity levels, there is much to be noted. It is quite conceivable that the causes of the phenomenon lie here. The first consideration might be termed the anesthesia episode. Now, this took place some 6 months prior to the first symptom. The beginning came when I noticed an unusual heady effect from the fumes of a gallon can of contact cement. Yeah, see, I don't remember reading this, man. Robert Monroe was huffing paint. I don't think he was doing it on purpose. I was installing a cubbyhole desktop in the wall of a bedroom at home when I became aware of the sensation. The can clearly stated on the lid that the cement should be used in well-ventilated areas, and I correctly assumed that this was a fire hazard warning from the manufacturers. The sensation reminded me of that strange effect I had experienced in the past just as I was going under from anesthesia. Yeah, because you were probably about to pass out, man. Huffing glue or whatever, rubber cement. Curious, I experimented with the effect of the fumes. I don't ever remember reading this part. I experimented with the effect of the fumes a number of times in the following month, with very significant results. Upon learning that the fuming agents were toluene, a common commercial hydrocarbon detergent, and acetone. I use that to cut paint with. You're familiar with that, aren't you, Bryce? Once used as an anesthetic.
Oh yeah.
Don't you guys sell acetone at the paint store?
Oh yeah, we do.
See, this is crazy, man. I guess I forgot about this. That he actually was like huffing this stuff or experimenting with it. I made several experiments with the subjective effects of light anesthesia, utilizing a less volatile and relatively safe inhalant, trilene. In retrospect, the results of these experiments seem to parallel closely the reports of those who have undertaken the LSD experience. No, it doesn't, dude. That's not even the same. Who told you that? Not that I would know, but we won't get into that. Intensely vital and not all unpleasant. The effects may well have triggered an inner desire or need for experiences beyond those I had to that date. Reluctantly, I stopped the experiments, as there seemed inherent dangers of physiological side effects if they were continued. Yeah, you think? I mean, why didn't he just go and huff plumber's glue? You know, that stuff gets you real high. Or just start huffing all kinds of different paints and gas to see what would happen. This is kind of weird to me. Although I had set up rigid controls, there was no certainty that they would always work. However, I did find out some interesting facts about anesthesia to satisfy my curiosity. In Ireland, it seems ether was sold by the spoonful by peddlers who ladled it out at the street side each morning. Everybody likes a good ether binge back then, didn't they? In the early days, medical students often had ether parties, much like the parties of the black market LSD users today. Doctors have reported that ether addiction has been quite common through the years. Captains of gasoline tankers have problems with the seagoing version of the wino. When signed on as crew, these men appear completely normal until they are found unconscious alongside a cargo vent. I understand they are labeled sniffers. This is kind of like where you can tell that Robert Monroe isn't or never has been in the drug world, right? Like these guys were labeled sniffers. I've never heard anybody, they're huffing gas or whatever. Never heard anybody call them sniffers before in my life. That's huffing, isn't it? Like, have you guys ever heard anybody being called a sniffer? Like if they're huffing paint or that, I think he made that shit up.
It might be like a 50s thing, you know?
These guys were called sniffers. You think it's a 50s thing?
Yeah. Today, if you're a sniffer, it's something else, but we won't get into that.
Yeah. All I ever smell is contact. So Ari says, I do upholstery for a living. All I ever smell is contact cement glue. You get used to it. We used to get into lacquer thinner and stuff. I told you all that story about that guy that left his body when we were doing that swimming pool. Or actually, he said that after he passed out and we dragged him away, he said that if you didn't catch your body, then you knew something was wrong, right? So he had an out-of-body experience. Well, I think it was epoxy at the time. All right. Further, I learned the relationship between... hold on. Somebody jumped in the live show thing. I got to mute them. Give me just a second. There you go. All right, so further I learned the relationship between alcohol and other anesthetics. Any anesthetic produces a trail from consciousness to an unconscious state, beyond which is death. The job of the anesthesiast is to put down or place the patient in a deep unconscious state as quickly as possible, avoiding any violent intermediate condition, which is the area I evidently explored. The technique then is to hold the unconscious patient just above death. Anesthesia always freaks me out. It's not even the surgery. Every time I went under surgery, I mean, I don't want to take a big left turn here, but every time I've went into surgery, it's never the surgery that scares me. It's the freaking anesthesia, because they hold you like right there, you know, like he's talking about, just above death. And the major advantage of ether when it was first introduced was that it had fewer possible side effects than alcohol and offered great control of the degree of unconsciousness. The period of consciousness following administration was quite short, and the unconscious state was quite extended before the terminal point, or death, was reached. The period of consciousness following the administration of alcohol, on the other hand, is quite long. When deep unconsciousness is reached, the distance to the terminal point is much shorter. The margin is so narrow that continued administration of alcohol to a patient after he has passed out can well cause death. Another fact I discovered is that archaeological and geological studies of the sites of several ancient Greek and Egyptian temples of worship, where many visions and miracles took place, have indicated the probable escape of underground gases, including nitrous oxide, and at around the particular spot sometime in the past. Nitrous oxide is one of the present-day anesthetics, odorless and tasteless. Some 3 months after this, quote, drug experience, which by then was almost forgotten, I developed an interest in the possibilities of data learning during sleep. I do not know what brought about this interest. Perhaps it was an outgrowth of an early academic environment coupled with my immediate observation of the teaching methods applied and the primary grades to my own children. So, if this is new to anybody, it sounds to me like Robert Monroe definitely had his experiences with drugs. And you guys remember that book that we read before? Like, I think it was Muldoon's book. It wasn't Muldoon's book. Who the hell? It was one of these books that talked about Robert Monroe. It wasn't Muldoon. It was one of those 6 books that we went through that talked about Robert Monroe and his thing with like huffing gas and all this stuff. But maybe he's not telling us just how much he experimented with huffing all this stuff. No judgment. I mean, we all had stupid stuff we did when we were younger, but yeah. To explore the potential of this interest, I made some studies of past and present concepts of the waking unconscious mind. There was supporting evidence that the unconscious recorded all sensory input data while awake and asleep. The problem was to introduce intelligent and organized data during sleep and to provide conscious recall when desired. The limited formal research material available showed contradictory conclusions. Simple reading of data to a sleeping subject produced only fragmentary and erratic results. No comparative studies between induction during sleep or deep delta sleep and the dreaming state, which is now termed REM sleep, have been made. Nor had any attempt been made to create deliberately a receptive sleep state with a pavilion type of conditional reflex induced to bring recall at will. To carry out this research in a convenient pattern, I made auto-hypnotic sound recordings to test various approaches to a workable technique. And if you remember, what he said too was before he started having OBE, before he started having out-of-body experiences, he was listening to sound tapes. And I think Wolf put in Robert Monroe's first interview that he did with Art Bell in the Discord. And I think in that interview, he says the same thing. He said that he was listening to tapes of some kind. I'm pretty sure. I want to say that, right? Like, do you remember, didn't he say that, Wolf? Do you remember that in the beginning? He said something like that he was listening to auto-hypnotic tapes or something like that, wasn't he?
Yeah, something like that. I can't quite remember either. But it sounds like he's using any method to get out, even though he can get out quite naturally. You know, it's almost like if he sneezes, he can blow himself out of his body. So, yeah.
Yeah, almost like he did that one time where he blew himself across the room when he got out of body, right? Right?
Yeah.
Like, I think, so what you're saying is he wasn't, like when he was doing all this stuff, unless I'm reading this wrong, he wasn't really trying to get out of body, was he? Or was he just trying to relax? You know, I get confused in the timelines here sometimes.
I think the book is kind of a bit all over the place, isn't it? It's not sequential. It's kind of a little bit all over the place.
Yeah. So exactly. So before he had the OBE, just like in that interview when he was talking to Art Bell, he said that he was just listening to hypnotic tapes. This seemed to be the first logical steps, as results had been obtained along similar lines, utilizing hypnotic sleep instead of the natural sleep state. The reason for the use of tape recordings was to depersonalize the technique and to ensure identical tests among different subjects. This is probably something different that he's talking about here. But I remember him saying that, though. The tapes were designed for use in a booth isolated from light and sound. The tapes used were deliberately simple in content, and there was a period of induction to create hypnotic sleep. Following this, a series of direction suggestion units were incorporated into a continuing pattern. These varied according to the tests and the results desired. Data learning, for example, was confined to multiplication tables from 12 to 24, and to Spanish and French vocabulary and idiomatic phrases. These were always accompanied by suggestion of full and complete memory and by post-hypnotic suggestion that recall could be obtained in a conscious state by a mental, physical cue, such as thinking of the number 555 and then tapping fingers on a table 5 times simultaneously. I think I get what he's saying there. You'd have to have, but you'd have to have someone else to do that so you could observe them doing that. You couldn't just do this yourself, I don't think. Each induction tape recording also included a suggestion that the subject would improve both physically and mentally. This affirmation was somewhat more than a generality. No details were suggested as to how this improvement would take place. Yet each functional area of the body, the nervous, circulatory, glandular, and digestive systems were to be completely normal, according to the instructions given the subject. Both the health and recall suggestions then were reinforced with each induction or use of the tape. In light of later incidents, this may have been important. Each experimental tape was carefully annotated, with every spoken word identically following a prepared script and routine. The tapes closed with a pattern to bring the subject back to complete and normal wakefulness. Suggestion here was extremely simple and effective, with no elaborate words that might be misinterpreted by the subject. The tapes were played to about 11 subjects, ranging in age from 7 to 50, so he actually did this on children too. The results implied a definite potential value with some improvement in techniques. It must be stated here that I applied the tapes experimentally first and most frequently to myself. This quite naturally brought them into the greatest area of suspicion in relation to the out-of-body experimentation. All the tapes have been examined, word by word, sound by sound, and at low background level for clues to a possible later effect. No clues seem evident, yet the suspicion remains. Such experimentation terminated with the appearance of the first symptom. Maybe this was the first time this is probably where he got his idea for the Monroe Institute, doing these first studies or research studies on people in booths playing this stuff to him. September 58th, July 1959. In the expectation of some correlation between effects, events, characteristics, theories, and conclusions, a sorting process was instigated. It soon became evident that 3 stages had taken place within this period. There may be additional stages beyond the 3, but these remain unknown. Both the beginning and the cutoff point of the beginning stage are fairly clear. Effects. The first unexplained effect was the cramp or constriction, as reported earlier. He's back on that stomach cramp again, right? What's up, Dan? What's up, Doc? Dutchie? So the first unexplained effect was the cramp or constriction, as reported earlier. Several weeks later, this was followed by the sensation of a ray from the north with resultant catalepsy. The hell does that mean? What does that mean? Do either one of you guys know what that means? Catalepsy? I just don't know what it means at the top of my head.
Isn't that like where you, I don't know, kind of like unable to move, or I don't know.
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah.
It's when a cat freaks out.
A seizing or grasping, from ancient Greek catalepsis, seizing, grasping. Rigid body, rigid limbs, staying in the same position when moved. Okay. It sounds like that movie Phenomenon, right? So first he gets the cramp, and then he sees this ray of light in the sky, and then it knocks him on his ass, and he can't move. You know, it sounds like the movie. But this was way before that movie came out. So several weeks later, this was followed by the sensation of a ray from the north with resultant catalepsy. Cautious experimentation brought the discernment of the vibration sensation. This sensory impression was later discovered to be reported consistently in the experiences of spiritualists, occultists, and others in the late 19th century. It is still referred to casually in much underground talk. What? The ray? Is that what he's talking about? This ray of light? I've heard no occultist or anybody in the spiritual communities tell me that they got zapped with a ray of light that made them cataleptic. None. Maybe I'm missing something here. I don't know about, what about you? Frozen. The doc says, yeah, it means frozen. The vibrational sensory effect was the single consistent symptom throughout the beginning stage. However, it appeared to be evolutionary. The early vibrations seemed to be rough, sometimes accompanied by a visual image of a localized ring of electrical sparks, and that's in quotations. The frequency was on the order of 10 cycles per second, according to the visual clock timing. At the conclusion of the beginning stage, the frequency had increased to approximately 18 circulations per second, or CPS, with much less discomfort to the physical body. This effect was induced willfully some 59% of the time in the later portions of the period. The second effect was the awareness of a high-pitched hiss heard softly yet constantly in the oral centers. Once established, it continued uninterrupted throughout the period. An ear specialist diagnosed this as, quote, hearing of the blood through the veins. Otherwise, my hearing was normal. Separation from the physical body took place approximately 3 months into the period, inadvertently in the first instance. Most subsequent incidents were induced deliberately. All took place only when the vibration effect was present. Remember that. I told you guys that too. To get a real, like, if you're going to do like a real etheric separation, they're always, I would say 90% of the time, I'm not going to say 99, there needs to be, you need to feel the vibrations, so. Like the Beach Boys saying. It became easier to create this effect as the period progressed. No other pronounced or repetitive effects were observed. Any physiological results seemed to be the result, or be restful rather than enervating or debilitating. At this stage, infrequent subsequent physical effects of excitement and stimulation were evident, but not to an extreme degree. These included accelerated pulse rate, perspiration, and sexual response. The next one is called emotional patterns. For fully half of the period, fears of mental and or physical disability were dominant. These fears were greatly, persuaded by consultation with and examination by medical and psychiatric authorities. The main subsequent factor was curiosity, tempered by strong undercurrents of anxieties related to undirected and uncharted exploration of the unknown, possible community and or familiar censure, and the fear of being unable to return to the physical body. In other words, he had all kinds of stuff that made him scared. He was scared that his family and friends would disown him and get rid of him, and that he wouldn't get stuck outside of his physical body. And here comes the sequence of experimentation. From the first out-of-body experiments, the experiments range from gradual familiarity of local separation, 10 feet or less from the body, to objective examination through partial separation, and finally, visits into area of locale 1 present in space-time. So, remember, that's that he talked about that earlier in the text too, not to just play around with just like getting out of body, staying close to it, and then start to wonder, like go off somewhere. "10 feet or less." All right, next part is methodology. The means of inducing the vibrational state were explored, centering chiefly on tape recordings described earlier and the methods of producing complete relaxation with full consciousness. The prerequisite for the vibrational state is relaxation with full consciousness. That's what it is. So it was determined that achievement of the vibrational state was relatively simple once the consciousness relaxed condition was established. The evidence of oral breathing as a condition was confirmed. Tuning. And you guys know what he's talking about, the tuning thing, right? You've heard that resonant. If you've listened to the Monroe tapes where they do the resonant tuning. So when they get into this this state, they'll get relaxed, and then they'll start kind of making this noise with their mouths. They'll start blowing out. He'll tell them to blow out like they're blowing out a candle, and then they'll start kind of making this natural noise, like if you were to hum, but tune with your mouth. So it's whatever noise you would make naturally if you were just to start humming without thinking about it. And in the tapes, it's the eeriest sounding shit. Because in the Monroe tapes, you hear him do the demonstration of resonant tuning, but there's like 10 to 30 people doing it at the same time, and it sounds eerie. You know, it sounds like something that would come out of a seance or something. It's crazy. I should have pulled a sound clip of it, but most of you've heard it before, the resonant tuning. Anyways, so the evidence of oral breathing as a condition was confirmed. This tuning of the vibrational state by minute movements of the physical jaw proved to be an effective method. It became apparent that separation occurred only during the vibrational state. The technique of separation evolved into a simple, uncluttered thought of up or away. Successive tests indicated that any non-physical movement in the second body was instigated by desire or thought alone. Problems of controlled movement to the predetermined location and unhampered immediate return to the physical body remained unsolved. Conclusions? The following conclusions were reached during this period. 1. There does exist a second body interspersed or in conjunction with the physical body. So he went through all of that to come to this conclusion. 2. The second body can move and act independently of the physical body. 3. These movements and actions can be made partially under the control of the conscious mind. 4. Some sensory inputs in the second body register as they do in the physical. Others are beyond translation. So others he doesn't really know how to explain to you. What's up, Ava? 5. Some movements in the second body occur in identical space-time to that of the physical counterpart. There it is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right there. So all of his first book is just him going crazy, thinking he doesn't know what's happening, starting to experiment with it, and then he comes up into like his own theory, right? There exists a second body. It can move independently besides the physical body. The movements and the actions can be made partially under the control of the conscious mind, but the unconscious mind controls a lot of what's going on too. You can still have some of the same sensory inputs as you do in your physical body. And some of the movements, here's the coolest part. I think this is the coolest part. Some of the movements in your second body occur in identical space-time to that of the physical counterpart. That means you're a ghost, damn it. August 1959 through September 1962. Effects. This period is identified as beginning with a mild coronary. There was no evidence of a relationship between experimentation and the illness, though absence of evidence does not necessarily eliminate the possibility. The vibrational state evolved until it was manifested only as a sense of warmth in later portions of period. This change resulted from a gradual speeding up of frequency until single pulsations were not perceptible. The auditory air hiss phenomena continued unchanged throughout the period. Separation from the physical became less procedural and more natural, with only occasional re-entry problems. The vibrational state was deliberately induced during daylight hours and occurred spontaneously late at night. Apparent physiological effects remain the same. No resulting innervation or debilitation, some stimulation though. These were observed most carefully in view of the coronary occlusion. Some emotional patterns. Early in the period, there was some anxiety about possible physiological effects. The inability to control the experience totally at will contributed to these fears, which lessened considerably by the middle of the period, due principally to the lack of supporting evidence and growing confidence. Still present were concerns relating to return to physical controls and the possibility of serious errors through ignorance in unknown areas. The sequence of experimentation, extended visits to Locale 1 became less frequent, to be replaced by initially inadvertent trips into Locale 2. In the later portion of the period, entry into Locale 3 was discovered and subsequently explored. The intertime state was discovered late in period. In his methodology, the countdown, in quotation, techniques of relaxation were applied in daylight tests, but late at night, borderland sleep states were converted to the now recognizable vibration or warmth condition. Oral breathing became an automatic function with some further experiments with jaw tuning. Separation from the physical body via the 180-degree out-of-phase back-away method proved to be the most effective and reliable. That's also when he started going through that damn hole to another dimension, too. And he went to what he calls Locale 3. Consistent techniques of positive return to the physical, or he calls it K-recall, was tested and put into practice. Here's the conclusions about this period that he has. 1. The existence of the second body was reaffirmed. 2. Locale 2, with specific characteristics different from those of Locale 1, was discovered. 3. The existence of Locale 3 was hypothesized with related characteristics to Locale 1, but in different stages of scientific development. 4. Human personality survives the transition of death and continues in Locale 2. 5. Communication between human beings can take place above the oral level in the waking or sleeping state and/or the second state. And 6. Some or most human living physical entities separate from the physical body during sleep. The reason for this is still not known. And I think this is the later stage, from October 1962 to October of 1970. Experimentation was limited during this period due principally to lack of opportunity. Preoccupation with material affairs took precedence, with evaluation of previous work as secondary effort. In other words, life got in the way. Some of the effects, though: the sense of vibration disappeared completely during the period, evolving into warmth, then to this indefinable, quote, being. So he went from vibrations to warmth to this being state. Separation from the physical was possible only in this being state with minimal effort. The only physical effect noted was a slight feeling of disorientation or headiness and minor discomfort for some 9 hours after a particular experiment. No special experiment had been performed, and the cause for this are unknown. In the middle of the period, I suffered a thrombus hemorrhoid, believed attributable to an experience during the experiment some 4 days prior to the appearance of the symptom. A thrombus hemorrhoid. I don't even want to know what that is. There was no previous medical history of this physical problem. Sleep requirements lessened during the period. However, when sleep appeared necessary, it became imperative to comply with the need. Non-compliance brought physical and mental debilitation. Doc, what the hell is a thrombus hemorrhoid? Do I even want to know? As little as 5 minutes of sleep brought major regeneration. The only other significant effect recorded was the occurrence at 2 separate times of a complete awareness of a nearby location. This was full consciousness at a level where full sensory awareness of physical surroundings was active, yet the self was 1 notch away. On both occasions, it required a deliberate decision to integrate completely into the physical environment. The effect of remaining in the 1 notch away environment is unknown. What the hell is the 1 notch away environment? The air hiss sound continued. Here's some of the emotional patterns. The fears found in previous stages were completely dissipated in this period. The most important reason for this was complete confidence in the methods of bringing about an immediate return to the physical when desired. Furthermore, the evaluation of previous data brought acceptance of the condition in terms of an evolution rather than deterioration. At the same time, minor concerns for continued existence in the physical body began to manifest themselves. Disregard for physical dangers lessened considerably as a result. The reason for this is not known. The sequence of experimentation. No pre-planned sequence was instituted during the period, due to the exigencies of the matters. Thus, experimentation was sporadic and took place only when it was opportune. Several strong evidential visits were made to both Locale 1 and Locale 2. Most visits were to Locale 2, with unspecified results as related to the physical world of Locale 1. Experimentation on strictly scientific grounds began late in the period under controlled laboratory conditions. Methodology. Little attention was given to this area as two principal problems remained unsolved. The first problem was the development of deep relaxation techniques which were obtained with increasing difficulty. The second was the chronic problem of controlling the destination point. Various techniques were applied, all with intermediate results. The heart of the difficulty lies in the conflicting desires between conscious mind and superconscious when both are operating at full capacity. In the second state, the superconscious is the stronger deciding element. Here are my conclusions about this era. 1. While in the second body, it is possible to create a physical effect on a physically living human entity while the later is awake. 2. There are unfolding areas of knowledge and concepts completely beyond the comprehension of the conscious mind of this experimenter. Oh, it's in the anus. Well, why didn't he just say it was a regular hemorrhoid? I guess he's being all scientific and shit, right? Huh. So, so far, this is all of his conclusions from book 1. This to me is another cool one, though. While in the second body, it is possible to create a physical effect on a physically living human entity while the later is awake. What was the name of that? What was the name of that movie we watched that Dutchie brought it in here? Dutchie's in here too. Was it Faults? Yeah. So we had a movie night. We have movie nights on Sunday nights, and Dutchie brought this movie in called Faults. And it was a really cool movie. And it's about cults or whatever. And this, I don't want to give it away, but one lady in there told this guy to pretty much get out of his body, pass through the door, and then unlock the door because they were locked in the bathroom. Now, as funny as that shit is in the movie, like, I really think you can do that. Because in here, he pinched like 2 people. I personally have like got out of body one time and knocked on a desk. And I know my son heard it, and I know I could feel it too. But I still think that you would have to, I really think you'd have to, I think you have to be in like a certain state or a state of mind or focus or something like that to be able to do it, though. The stuff gets weirder, by the way. I mean, we're towards the end of Journeys Out of the Body. As we keep going down this like Robert Monroe journey, though, he keeps experimenting with this stuff. Let me see. I want to see if it's even possible. Yeah, we'll take a short break and then we'll be right back. I want to see if this next chapter is even like possible to get into, maybe interpret. I think it is, though. That's the top of the hour anyway. Stay with us.
chance worth taking. Leave your reason at the door. 'Cause the writing's on the wall. The sunshine's gone. Maybe it's too soon to call, but we've both been here before. So waiting on. No, I'm music, it ain't done. 'Cause I found my revelry on the highways, in the dance halls that filled our history. So can you hear me now? Gonna tell you where I stand. There's gotta be some way to lift you from this place. I'm not losing in the danger zone. The city lights my thinking. I would stand and face down every blow. 'Cause you're a chance worth taking. Leave your reason at the door. 'Cause the writing's on the wall. Sunshine's home. Maybe it's too soon to call, but we've both been here before. So waiting on. No, our music, it ain't done. 'Cause I found my revelry on the highways, in the dance halls that fill our history. So can you hear me now? Gonna tell you where I stand. There's gotta be some way to lift you from this place.
Alrighty. This is just one weird book, man. I mean, not in a bad way, right? But it's like this whole book, and I was just telling Wolf and Bryce during the intermission too that there's a lot of stuff in book 2 that I thought was in book 1. because we're at the end of this thing. Like we're about to wrap up this entire book. So if you've been keeping up with us, the Journeys Out of the Body thing from the start of the series until now, and anybody ever asked you, say, hey, man, have you read Journeys Out of the Body or whatever? Now you can say that you have. You did. Matter of fact, you went further than just reading. You got involved with the book. But there's a lot of stuff, like Wolf is right, man. There's a lot of stuff he just throws out in here that just seems a little weird and all over the place. So you can kind of get a sense of his anxiety and his, I guess, trying to figure out what the hell is going on. That's the vibe I get from this book. This is like, man, this stuff happened to me. What the hell is going on? But what I wanted to talk about before we get into this next chapter, because I think he just brushes over it, is Locale 3. Locale 1 is obviously the physical dimension. We've talked about that, where you become a ghost, you're close to your body, you can see the physical world, you can go to places, whatever. Then he starts to talk about Locale 2, how it's this place where all of a sudden he just ends up there, I guess. But Locale 3, this is something weird that we'll have to figure out, I guess, through the other books. But this place where he had to, well, number one, he had to flip his body over in a reverse position. And then he started playing with this hole. And then this hole inadvertently led him to another dimension that he says is just like this world, except the science is different. According to, this is just his experience, by the way. It doesn't mean this is going to be all of our experiences. I think that's why he's calling it Locale 3, because it could just be a state of consciousness. But it seems as if he went to this other dimension. He started living this guy's life, and that's weird. And every time I talk to Wolf after the show or during movie stuff, Wolf's always like, doesn't that concern you a little bit? And actually, you know what, Wolf, the more I thought about it, the more it does kind of bother me a little bit, right? Like, he just kept kind of going back there. And I don't know if he did it on purpose. I mean, what would you do? Would you, like, if you ended up in someone else's body in another relationship with a woman, wouldn't you start thinking, man, maybe I need to get the hell out of here? Like, I'm really, like, what if this is really somebody's life I'm messing with? Isn't that what you were saying, Wolf? Because you said, oh, no, he's probably sleeping with that guy's woman or whatever.
Yeah, I think he was taking advantage of the situation, you know. But
yeah,
and he also kind of looked down on the guy as well. So it's all a little bit wrong, really. But you know, each to their own.
Yeah, because he went back like 3 times. I mean, it's easy to judge from our point of view because I've never been in Locale 3. But what would you do? What would you really do if you were able to go to another, I guess, parallel place and live in someone else's body? Like,
the thing is, though, when it gets to this point, this Locale 3, you don't really know if it's just a sort of lucid imagination. It's nothing can be proved, kind of thing. So is it part of his own psychology or what? I mean, who knows?
True, but he does say that it feels just like Locale 1. And I know what Locale 1 feels like, dude. Locale 1 feels like right now, whatever you're feeling right now in this moment as you're hearing my words, that's what Locale 1 feels like. There might be a slight hum or a slight hiss or maybe some eerie silence. But if he's being honest about that, then it's possible, I mean, we could say it's possible that he actually is in some type of parallel world, living some other dude's life. Right? Like, we can't say it sounds impossible, but if the universe is made up of nothing but consciousness, and quantum physics has shown us this kind of in a way, then it would be possible if there is a multiverse to maybe hop over to some other place. And the only way to do it wouldn't be through some kind of time machine or something that you would conjure up in a laboratory. You could do it consciously because, like Thomas Campbell says, consciousness is fundamental. And in my experiences with magic and the occult and everything else, consciousness creates realities. So who's to say we couldn't skip realities with it too, you know? But the bigger question, Wolf, is when you land in another man's body, and you know you're screwing their relationship up, do you keep going back? Right? That's the $1 million
I guess it
question.
depends. Yeah. Depends how hot she is, I guess. I don't know.
That's kind of like, it's easy to say, like when people say, oh man, if I won a bunch of money, if I became a millionaire, I'd give it away and give it to the poor. But you've never been a millionaire. You've never won the lottery. You don't even know what that's like. Your unconscious programming can't even conceive the idea of doing it. So how the hell do you know what you would even do? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, it's like I said to you before. If he left his body with his wife at the same time and she wanted to sleep with some dude in this realm and he's standing next to her, what's he going to say? What's he going to do? I don't think he'd be too happy about that.
Yeah, I wouldn't be. It's pretty foul. Now, he didn't say he slept with her in the book, but he did say that he kind of jacked with her relationship a little bit, you know. And then it was like he was judging him too, right? Like his weakness and all this other stuff. It was kind of weird, you know. Don't you think?
Yeah, man. I mean, if he really did enter somebody else's body, then that other guy kind of went to sleep, so to speak, his consciousness. Yeah. And then when he woke up, he would have been freaked, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
So there is a moral question.
I think I would have boned out. I'd have been like, this ain't right. I can't stay around for this, you know. I think. But then again, I don't know. You got any input on this, Bryce? Before we go to the next one? What would you have done?
Not slept with somebody else's wife.
Man, that's what everybody's saying. He didn't say that he did that. He did not say that he slept with someone else's wife. He just said that.
They're like, nah, she's married.
Yeah. I don't think he did that. I don't think he did. I think that he's being honest in this book where he it's just trippy, man. The idea. He also, another thing too, before we get into the statistical classification, because right now this is all just his findings this is all his like conclusions. But remember too, like when he went through that hole and he said that he traveled for like an hour. It was either an hour or 4 hours away from his body. And that's how long it took him to get back. But he also said that another thing whizzed by him, almost like going in the opposite direction. And so I would get that feeling like, okay, well, if I'm in this hole and I'm going this way and something in this realm is going back the way I came, then that sumbitch is going back towards my body and is going to get in my body. That's what I would think. You remember when he said that? I do.
Yeah, I remember that, yeah. I mean, it's that whole thing about walk-ins, isn't it? If something else could inhabit your body. I don't think it's possible with astral projection, but, man, I don't know.
Yeah. Let me look in the... No, you're good. I don't think any of us know. I'm just curious, man, you know. What's up, Grant? We're doing well, brother. I am going to go to the chat here and just see what some people here. Local 3 mall world archetype. Freaky and unfun for me. Have you been there? Not everyone gets a thrombosis hemorrhoid from stomach contractions and breath work. Yeah, so he got a bad... I don't know why he brought that up. I guess he's bringing up everything because he doesn't know what's happening. Even his own damn hemorrhoids. All right. Let's get through this one. Statistical classification. The first step in making some kind of sense out of this matter of raw data was to set up standards for measurement and analysis. After several attempts, it became apparent that only a few of the typical yardsticks could be applied. Yeah, how the hell would you measure any of this? Therefore, assumptions or premises were made to permit identification in the sorting process, and the conclusions brought forth are only as valid as the premises on which they are based. The following are the primary assumptions. 1. Vertical qualities of the experimenter. Implied here is not the experimenter's status in our society, but rather the assessment of basic characteristics of the individual involved. However sincere the experimenter may be, credibility must lie within the fundamental personality. In my experiments, I am willing to undergo any additional psychiatric, psychological, and physical examinations in the interest of the development of additional related data. This alone may be sufficient to establish a satisfactory degree of intellectual acceptance. For the record, I'm going to say this. Personally, I think that anybody that goes out on a limb, you don't have to, but anybody that goes out on a limb and is going to say this kind of stuff and like say, yeah, I've been out of body, or I went to the ninth dimension, or I'm a blue chicken super overlord, super soldier, or whatever. Before you start like buying the story, I think everybody should get psychologically and physically examined. Don't you? I mean, if you really want to know the truth, and you want to know that the person you're talking to isn't some kind of multiple personality agent or a narcissist or someone that just makes up stories like, or is in denial or whatever, it'd be nice to say, hey, by the way, before I buy your course or go to your workshop, have you been psychologically or psychiatrically like evaluated? At least Robert was willing to do that. All right, number 2, similarities are analogous. Simply stated, this means that the observed condition or action taken has reality by the same standards as those opposed or applied. I'm getting dyslexic again. As those applied to its here now physical counterpart, regardless of any apparent incompatibility with the present knowledge and concepts of mankind. The reality of the experience is acceptable if it equals, approximates, or is sufficiently similar to the conditions of perception and interpretation normal to the waking physical state. 3. Perception and interpretation. The accuracy of these is assumed to be correct within the limitations of the same error-producing factors as are found in the normal waking physical state. These factors are contingent upon environmental training and experience, intellectual quotient, and emotional makeup. It must be assumed that sensory inputs in the second state, although obviously of a different nature, are subject to the same reasoning and rational interpretive process. The objective analysis of structure and the shape identification of qualification, classification, and operation occur in equal relationship to the experience and training of the individual, just as in the normal physical waking state. Further, in perceiving data beyond such experience and training, the mind in the second state acts under a strong command to identify. In acting on this unequivocal command, it will identify within the limits of experience rather than accept the existence or fact of an unknown. In other words, you must assume that the experimenter is reporting truthfully. You must assume that what takes place while in the second body is real, if it meets the conditions of reality held in the physical waking world. You must assume that the mind works similarly in the second body, using different means of seeing, hearing, and feeling, as well as a few new senses. You must assume that the mind refuses to accept an unknown element in the second state, even to the point of incorrect identification. You must assume that the same qualities of human error in perception and interpretation are present. Given these premises, the sorting and classification of some 589 experiments over a period of 12 years becomes somewhat easier. Here are some further conclusions. And this is going to get a little hard for me to convey to you guys because he has like tables here. Tables of facts. Tables of things that he came up to know that would be facts. Parallels, I guess you could say. Because this is why I love Robert Monroe so much, is because he approached this whole thing like a scientific experiment. All right, here are some further conclusions. In dreams, the reasoning, intellectual process is absent when you're dreaming. Consciousness, as the term is understood, is not operative. Either participation in events is at the purely reactive or uncontrollable level, or there is complete non-participation as an immobile observer, unable to take deliberate action. I don't want to just pass this up. So we've all dreamed. Is that true? Do you think that's true? Wolf or Bryce? In dreams, the reasoning intellectual process is absent. I don't know if that's true. Consciousness as
Well, if you have
that's like what he's saying is you can't reason or be intellectual while you're in a dream. Is that what he's saying? That doesn't make a lot of sense.
No, because you can have a lucid dream, or in normal dreams that aren't that lucid, you can still direct and control them to a point and do things that you would do in real life, I assume.
Yeah, he says consciousness as the term is understood is not operative. Either participation in events is at the purely reactive or uncontrollable level, or there is complete non-participation as an immobile observer, unable to take deliberate action. Now that I do agree with, because all of my dreams have been like that. Either I'm all of a sudden in this other reality that I have no idea, just like Inception says, like where the dream started, what I'm doing here, until I become lucid. So I'm just in this reality. And it is purely reactive or uncontrollable. Or there's a complete non-participation as like you're just observing the dream, or you're just observing something that's happening. Perception is limited to one sense or at least two. No immediate analytical ability is present or utilized. Associative misidentification occurs with all perception and is retained as such in conscious memory. So I agree like with that, as long as it's like you're saying, Wolf, as long as it's not lucid, because once you become lucid, that changes everything, doesn't it? I mean, once you become lucid, you're not purely reactive or at an uncontrollable level. You start to become more creative, I think, you know. So he might be confusing. Like, do you think he might be confusing some lucid dreams and might be slipping into like locale 2 or whatever? Maybe.
Maybe. I mean, I don't know about you, but if I've had a lucid dream, I can control it for so long or to a point, and then it just becomes out of control dreamlike.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, most definitely. It doesn't ever seem like you can control it like for the entire time, or you just wake up.
No.
Okay.
Unless he's kind of suggesting that if he's in a different locale, then there's a different kind of operating system where you can control it completely, or you can't control it either. You know what I mean? These different locales, but he doesn't really kind of explain that, does he?
No, he's not being that specific about which one he's in. He's just saying that in dreams, it seems like you're along for the ride, basically. You're either observing it or you're along for the ride, or you're just participating in it. And just like in that movie Inception, you don't even know how the hell you got there, much less do you care. Until, like I said, you become lucid, then everything changes, you know. Okay, so the second state is the antithesis of dreaming. So he's just talking about being out of body, just as is the waking state. Recognition of I am consciousness is present. The mind attempts to handle perception in precisely the same manner as it does during full physical consciousness. Decisions are made and actions are taken based upon perception and reasoning. That's true. I've had experience with that. Like, as soon as you get out of body, nothing really changes as far as that's concerned. So verification of perception can be achieved by deliberate and systematic repeated action. Participation is as fundamental as it is in waking physical state. Sensory input is not limited to one or two sources. Emotional patterns are present to a greater extent than in the physical consciousness, but can be directed and controlled to the same degree. If any experimental experience did not contain a majority of the conditions listed in the second state category, it was considered a dream. The remaining experiences were again classified. Environment was analyzed next in the search for causes. And if there was something that created the condition, it was very obscure, as illustrated in this chart. And you guys, I don't know if I can go down this chart, but I'll try. So physical conditions and successful experiments, the percent of total conditions present. So during the day, he had 42% of his experiments were successful. During the night, 57%. When it was warm, this is pretty interesting though, he got out of body 96.2% time more successful when it was warm, and only 3.8% when it was cold. So maybe he just likes sleep, and maybe he's just more comfortable when he's warm, I guess. The humidity had no discernible effect. Barometric pressure, no discernible effect. Prone, when he was prone, he got out 100% of the time. Upright, there's no number. like he was talking about facing north and south, where his head's to the north, the success rate was 62.5%. When his body was facing east to west, where his head was to the east, his success rate was only 19%. And then he goes on to say the moon and planetary positions have no discernible relationship, but for some reason he has 18.4% next to that. So that's interesting. There's the warmth, and then there's the north and south thing. So maybe there's something to that. Successful results were obtained principally under conditions of warmth, lying prone in a north-south position. So like I said, he just added all three of his highest numbers there for the most success rate. There's no noticeable effect from sunlight, humidity, pressure changes, physical body location, or the moon's gravitational forces. More sophisticated environmental studies are possible, but none have been made to date. Evaluation of the physiological state was somewhat easier, as most notes contained reference to it. So when he was in normal health, in other words, when he wasn't sick and he was healthy, he got out his success rate was 78%. When he was minor debilitated or kind of sick, he got out only 21.2% of the time. I don't know how he's doing this math, but he's got it written down here. When he had an illness or injury, it was 0.4. When he was tired, his success rate was 46.5. So he almost got out of body almost 50% of the time just from being tired. When he was well rested, only 18.8% of the time. Intermediately rested, 34.7% of the time. Before eating, 17.5%. After eating, 35.5%. And intermediate, I guess, is in between states, 47%. And possible catalytic factors, drugs or other agents, he's got a number here, 12.4%. So I think old Bob might have popped a Xanax or two or something, didn't say anything to anybody. I don't know. He said, now this indicates that physical illness, so often present in spontaneous disassociation into the second state, is not a significant point. The most frequent state is a slightly tired condition, not immediately after eating, in which medicinal or chemical stimulants and depressants do not play a vital part. Okay, and some more numbers here. At the start of his successful experiments, when he was calm, 3.2% of the time, he got out. Moody, 8.9% of the time. When he was preoccupied, that says 64%. Anticipating, 11.9%. Restless, 3.7%. Emotionally stimulated, 9%. Intellectually stimulated, 6.5%. Agitated, 7%. Frightened, 2.7%. And unknown, 30%. So in classification of the psychological state, if the single human laboratory, in quotations, laboratory, is to be a starting point, a basic calmness seems to be a prerequisite, with some overtones of emotion and introspection. It must be pointed out that under the frightened category are various degrees of trepidation, most of which are noted in early stages of experimentation. The balance prior to experiments which produced a violent or disturbing experience. The feeling of anticipation, in varying degrees, often occurred simultaneously with calm. The following is the analysis of control elements. All right, so the origination of conditioned and successful experiments. Willfully induced. When he willfully induced the out-of-body state, 40% of it was successful. 14.9% of his out-of-body states were spontaneous, and 44.9% were kind of in between, I guess, intermediate. Deliberate induction experiments, percent of total attempts, when he deliberately tried to get out of body. Not willfully, but deliberately tried to get out of body. 50, let's just call it 59%. When he was asleep and I guess slipped out of body was 13.6%, and ineffective when it just didn't happen is 27.7%. Here's some of the methods he used. The induction sound tape, the countdown relaxation, the recall technique, and the composite. The highest one here that he has is countdown relaxation. So Here are some of the symptoms that were evident in successful experiments. The air hissing sound that he was talking about was heard 45% of the time in his notes. The physical catalepsy, I guess that paralysis feeling, was only 11.4% of the time. The vibration effect, 30%. The feeling of that warmth that he was talking about, 66.9%. And the rest he has put under miscellaneous at 33.8%. So in the spontaneous classification, it must be noted that the experiments became willful upon activation of the second state condition, and the condition began to manifest itself during a state of normal relaxation, and I took advantage of that opportunity. Intermediate were cases where only the tendency was evident and development of the condition was exercised with deliberate intent. The successful result includes those cases where 2 or more of the symptoms were generated, with the result that part or all of the second body was brought into evidence. Sleep producing includes those during which I simply just fell asleep. Ineffective refers to the instances in which no discernible result was obtained and none of the symptoms were induced. Under the methods used, the effectiveness of the various techniques attempted is illustrated. The techniques are described elsewhere and represent an evolution based upon simple trial and error testing procedures. The induction sound tape, for example, proved quite effective but had inherent limitations and imposed restrictions upon self-determination. It was for this reason that the countdown technique was most frequently utilized. Symptoms must be examined from the evolutionary view. Physical catalepsy was observed only in the early stages. This is also true with the vibration effect, which noticeably evolved into the feeling of warmth and only occasionally was perceived during the middle and later stages. The air hissing sound appeared early in the experimentation and continued intermittently. Each successful experiment, observational data sources were separated into the following category: seeing, hearing, and touch, taste, smell, movement, and other. Each successful experiment, this is what he was able to observe. So he could see 67% of the time. He could hear 82% of the time. He could touch things 69% of the time. Taste, he has 0.7. Smell, 0.3. That's a weird one, smell. Movement, he can move 94.2% of the time, and other he has at 73. It must be pointed out that the sensory input relationships listed above translated into an approximation of each of the categories. This does not imply that the identical non-physical nerve system equivalents were used in perception. At the present stage, there is no evidence to prove or disprove a similar structure in the second state, nor is there any apparent explanation of the low position of the taste and smell senses on the scale, other than that both of them depend upon physical contact with matter itself or particles of matter. However, the sense of touch would seem to have the same limitation, yet appears as a prime input source. The answer may be that the latter is operating on some form of radiation perception level, or in the case of the individual is more developed than the taste and smell patterns. Movement is considered a classification because it connotates action rather than passivity and seems to be truly a sensory source above and beyond the traditional 5 senses, much as the balancing mechanisms in the physical body transmit signals to the brain independent of supporting or conflicting impulses from other senses. In the physical body, this mechanism may be based upon application of gravitational and inertial forces, and this may hold true in the second state as well. Under the other classification are types that have no physical counterpart. The means of perception in the second state are beyond the scope of present knowledge or theory, and the most sound conjecture is that all perception in the second state is achieved by means of some force in the electromagnetic spectrum, by direct magnetic fields either received or induced, or through some force or field yet to be identified rather than by counterparts of the physical mechanisms. Only by empirical study and wide multiple source testing could this be determined. The analysis and classification. He's got a lot of damn statistics here, man. It sure isn't like woo-woo at all, is it? To read the science behind this, you know. Why would you see Jesus when you do OOB? I don't know. He doesn't talk about Jesus at all. The doc says Xanax is a negative. Yeah. percent experiments when characteristic was present. So this is, I guess, objects that he saw in the astral realm. So a shape of or form of some kind. I don't know what the 3 columns are here, though. So I guess first, second, and third state. Anyways, I'll just name some of the stuff that he saw. They all have different numbers, and it doesn't really matter. So structure components, animate, intelligent. He has subhuman, artifact, unknown. He does have intelligent at a pretty high number. Animate, intelligent things, I guess. Subhuman's pretty low. Artifacts in the astral realm, 27%. Inanimate objects around 21 to 46%. I guess these are the 3 phases here. The middle phase was 46%. Abstract artifacts up to 62%. And event actions, observed participation, and all this other stuff right here, that's like 39%. Not a big deal. If you want to look at the book, you can look at the actual statistics of this, but I don't think that really matters. There's just a lot of weird stuff in the astral realm. That's what I would say right there. So it can be inferred from this survey that the majority of activities in the second body had to do with humanoid type intelligences. Remember, that was a high number, 65. Well, actually, in the middle phase, it got up to 75%. So the majority of the activities in the second body had to do with humanoid type intelligences operating in familiar or similar backgrounds and using identifiable objects. However, the trend is reversed when examination is made of the event itself or the action involved. Here it is illustrated that much is beyond my experience and knowledge. Now, relevancy to the second state, in terms of perceived data, the greatest weakness was found in the attempt to apply known physical, scientific, historical, and social structures to the experiences while in the second body. And so the numbers are crazy. I won't even go over all those numbers. Basically what he's saying is, in the second state, it's almost like what Wolf was talking about. It's like being in a really crazy lucid dream world is what it seems to me to be like. But the above sorting process of all these things I just didn't read must be considered in the light of developing techniques and the experience in the second state. The category of time refers to the sense of the passage of time while in the second body, and is unrelated to physical time measurement. Lapse time in the physical state is not presented, as it is not germane to the actuality of the second state. Under the identical column are listed the events in which there was awareness of the passage of time. Under different, not applicable, are listed those events in which lapse time appeared different, either accelerated, retarded, or non-existent. Unknown shows where data was not available from the notes. The remaining scientific concepts refer only to conditions, actions, and environments while in the second body, and do not relate to local experiments and visits to strictly here-now people and places. The latter followed all natural laws, although this did not necessarily affect the second body experiments. The analysis of social concepts demonstrates the perplexing problem of adjusting to the second state environment. With such vast differences in prospect, thought, action, and emotion become extremely difficult to comprehend. The incongruities faced are described elsewhere. In the analysis of historical religious concepts, the events listed under identical in all 3 subcategories are principally the result of excursions into the here-now. Under the second column, virtually all experiences appear to be in areas other than present-time space. The third column represents uninterpretive or unreported data. Throughout the developing patterns of the experiments, changes in perception took place steadily, as indicated in the previous chapter. Early perception resulted chiefly from the experiments represented by the data in the first column, while the second and third column figures represent probing in the middle and later stages. It is evident that only by applying new concepts can these later results be relegated to known areas. Classification of similarities and analogies brought about the emergence of another pattern of locales. And this is where I'm going to see if I can show you guys this. Hold on a second. I might be able to show you guys this, or I could just say it really quick. So he has 3 columns, locale 1, locale 2, and locale 3. The distribution in successful experiments. Time, 85.8% in locale 1. There's not even a number in locale 2. And guess what? In that crazy locale 3 world we were talking about earlier, he has 88.7%. So it's almost as if locale 1 and locale 3 are really close to physical reality, but this weird locale 2 place isn't. And then he goes into matter structure, conservation of energy, gravity. He says gravity is more prevalent in locale 3 than it is locale 1. Action and reaction, more prevalent also in locale 3, 67% over 60%. Male-female relationship, more prevalent in locale 3 than locale 1, 33.9 to 24.2. And then these other things are like technical development, political history. It's crazy. You'll have to get the book and look at the charts for all this stuff. It's just a lot to read, but I find those the most interesting. Symbiotic relationships, even symbiotic relationships, 33.9 in locale 3, which is that parallel dimension, more than 12.8% locale 1. That just doesn't make any damn sense. It's almost like that parallel world was more real than this world, or locale 1. A further condition which did not involve movement was left unclassified as it fell into none of the above locales. This is described in Chapter 12. Locale 1 conforms strictly to the physical material world in all respects. Locale 2 is many-faceted, but evidences only as a few of the patterns common to locale 1. It is an area of energy fields, both familiar and strange, where there is no gravity, but significantly several of the more vital laws of physics do apply. Socially, historically, and philosophically, there is very little parallel to locale 1. Locale 3 poses inscrutable questions. It has almost identical characteristics to locale 1, except for several definite departures which are inexplicable. These show up under technical development, political history, and theological premises. Only extended exploration of the second body phenomena by an expanded research group can bring about truly comparative studies of these areas. All that is needed is motivation. Well, damn. So the next few chapters he goes into, which I'll save it for tomorrow night, because it gets pretty emotional, actually, in my opinion. But the next few chapters is his overall conclusion, some of his biggest theories about what happened, and then we finish the book. But I appreciate you guys hanging, Wolf and Bryce, hanging out with me, chatting with me. I want to go to locale 3, man, but I can't even get out of locale 1 when I get out of body, so apparently I got a long ways to go, Anybody excited about the next two chapters? Wolf, you still there? Or did you well, hell, it's like, what time is it where you're at?
Yeah,
now?
I'm here. I was just thinking, does he ever go from one locale to the other at the same time? Like start in one and move to another, or doesn't seem to, does he?
I think I don't know. Like, I think he talks about that more in the second book. The second book is got way more stories and crazier adventures and stuff. Like, this whole first one was all experimentation, but I always thought that when he went back to his physical body, like when he said, I turned around, went back, went to the physical, that at that point, wouldn't he be in locale 1 or no? Like right when he's back at his physical body.
Yeah, maybe. I would have thought so.
Because I'm thinking about it like an onion, I guess. Or not an onion, but like literal, linear timelines or something, I guess. But no, he hasn't. He hasn't really, not that I remember, he didn't mention that in this book. Going from locale 1 to 2.
All the stats that he does, I'm not sure how he comes to those figures, And it's almost like he's quantifying and making it a scientific experiment so that it's kind of will be viewed by those in that sort of academic way that it's a real thing and that he's doing it.
Yeah, there's a lot
in a real
of
scientific way. Yeah,
I just
don't know
want
if
to
that
read
makes
all
sense. Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I don't. Yeah, I don't think they would take him seriously still because it's just too far out for some of them. But I appreciate him trying to do it in that way. But it's hard to read as well, isn't it? As well, at the same
Back
time.
in this book was released like in the 70s too, so I think it would be even harder for them to accept it then. Now they might, after like Thomas Campbell, the Monroe Institute's been out for a long time. Like we have to remember that Robert Monroe was a big. Like, I don't think we give this guy enough credit on how much he moved the yardstick when it comes to conscious exploration. Not as much as we would like it, but just writing these books and starting the Monroe Institute triggered all kinds of stuff, after that from other people,
Yeah, and it's taken maybe 30, 40 years for it to really get going, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it has, and but damn, see, I'm just now realizing that some of the stuff that I wanted to really get into and talk about with you guys, like when he tries to actually visit the president in the astral realm, and he starts wondering, wait, who the hell is here? I mean, if I can do this, how many other people can do this? That's not in this book, I don't think, unless it's in these last 2 chapters. I've read these books so many times that I get them like mixed up, Like the serpent thing, I thought that was in the second book, but it's in the first one. And I keep calling it the serpent thing. The thing where, that crawls over his belly and shit, that thing. Which is pretty
it comes
weird.
through in a chariot. Yeah, man.
Yeah. It comes through in a chariot and plays crazy music when it comes by,
Yeah, that's the one.
There's just a part in here that, like, I was hoping we would get to, but we're not going to get to tonight. We'll probably get to it tomorrow and just finish the book, but where he talks about his ideas about God and Jesus and all that stuff and having to come to terms with it, that's kind of a big deal to him, But I won't, I'll just tease that. How about that for tomorrow night? That'll work. Let's see. Anybody else got any other questions in the chat? Bryce, you want to say anything? You good, brother?
I'm good.
Mike says, OOB is a huge mystery. The Greeks were incorporating it. Followers of Apollo studied prophecy, drugs, worse drugs, and music theology. Can't wait for the last chapters, Delina says. Thank you so much for reading this. Yeah, I love reading this. I love doing this with you guys, man. What's up, Dean Bean Cooter? Yeah, this is it's actually like taking an adventure, We don't have to, as much as video games and movies have taken the adventure away from us. I like video games and movies a lot, by the way. Doing this stuff with you guys live is like going on the adventure with you guys with Robert Monroe. To me, it is. So I love it too. I get a lot of selfish gratification out of it, I guess. Anyways, we'll wrap it up for tonight. Thank you guys for listening. Thanks for your support. I love each and every one of you. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. Sweet dreams. Night night.